What's happening, nation? I appreciate you checking in with me. All right, let's talk about undrafted free agents. I finally was able to kind of break all these guys down and really figure out whether or not these guys have a chance at making this roster. And we're going to talk about there's 5 players that I think have a really good chance at making the roster. I'm also going to go over kind of my evaluation. What do I take into consideration as I'm looking at these players and why I think they have a chance at making this 53-man roster? Because let's be real, all right, there's a very low percentage as to whether or not these players can actually make it. There's not a lot of players that make the initial 53-man roster. Now, what does happen throughout the season, players get injured, injuries do happen, and then you elevate players to the practice squad. The guys that I'm going to talk about are guys that I think are going to make the initial 53-man roster to start this season. And so I will give some honorable mentions, but at the end of the day, we're definitely going to go over the 5 that I think will break it down. But first and foremost, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We appreciate every single one of you. I hope you guys had a great day, but definitely happy Mother's Day. Definitely wanted to give a shout out to all the mothers out there. First and foremost, let's take a look at what does my evaluation look like when I break down these undrafted free agents. Obviously, I look at their game film, right? I look at their talent. I look at what do they bring to the table. And then second, I take a look at, do they possess any type of traits, or is there something that can separate themselves from the rest of the players within their position group that they're competing for? All right. So for example, right, if we have a bunch of short receivers, is there an undrafted free agent that's 6'5", right? Or do we have a lot of slow receivers and there's an undrafted free agent that runs a 4.3 40, And so is there a trait or something that they possess or characteristic that separates themselves from everybody else in their position group? And then lastly, what I look at is how good are our starters as well as the players that are really in position to be the second and third stringers. All right, that's one thing I want to look at. Are the starters within that position not very good? There are a lot of question marks on how good they're going to be moving forward. And then what do their backups look like? So for example, our linebacker group, there's a lot of question marks. You got Landon Roberts, question mark. Devin White, which Devin White are we going to get? Then you have Tommy Eichenberg. We don't know what he brings to the table. And then we have a lot of question marks. Amari Burney, Amari Gaynor, guys sitting behind them that we don't know. Are they good enough to be starters? We have no clue. So there's a lot of question marks in this linebacker room. And then the second example would be our edge rushers. We have maxxcrosby. We have Malcolm Koonce, both coming off of season-ending injuries. Obviously, Malcolm Koonce is the biggest question mark. Just how healthy is he going to be going into the season? And will that last throughout the remainder of the season? But then let's look at our depth in the edge rushing position. Our depth is very questionable at that position. So is there an undrafted free agent that could potentially come in and compete for that depth position or a spot as a rotational piece? And that's one of the biggest things is these undrafted free agents, I'm not looking at them to come in and be starters right away. That's not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at who can come in and can compete for a potential rotational role on this 53-man roster, but also can they contribute in special teams? Because special teams is a third of the game. And so you have to be able to show value in special teams in order to make this roster when you are an undrafted free agent. So, and then there's also a name that I'm going to talk about as an honorable mention, but there's a reason why I think that he may not make the 53-man roster, but there's a reason why we brought him into training camp to compete, but also help us throughout the season. And so I'll kind of break that down as well. But before we get into it, if you can't hit that like button, subscribe, turn on those notifications. My next giveaway is at 5,000 subscribers. So if you want to be including that, make sure you hit that sub button. I would definitely appreciate it. And just before we get into it, just a quick reminder, Saturday, May 17th, it's right around the corner. If you're in the SoCal area, Raider Nation Summer Kickoff. For the Raider Nation, it's a great way to be able to just kind of kick off the summer going into the football season, but it's in Bakersfield, California. Again, Saturday, May 17th. Jeremy Chin, you'll have an opportunity to buy a signing ticket. You can get a potential autograph, but I'm going to be there with a couple other guys that I'll link up with on this YouTube thing. Make sure you guys show up. You'll see the Raider War Room as well as my logo up there. Go check us out. Make sure you guys go say what's up. It's great to put names to faces. It's kid-friendly. It's indoors because it's going to be a little hot, but make sure you guys let me know in the comment section down below if you're planning on showing up because I definitely want to look out for you. But again, Raider Nation Summer Kickoff, Saturday, May 17th. And so I'll kind of go back up to the big board. So let's get into it. And one of the things I do want to mention before I bring up all of our undrafted free agents, and again, highlight the 5 that I think have a really good chance at making this squad, is last season I did this same exact thing, right? There was 5 players that I thought had a really good chance of making the 53 because of all the reasons that I just stated, things that I look for in order for a free agent to actually make this team. And out of the 5 free agents that I did name off last season, I made a video on this, was Amari Gaynor, Ladarius Griffin, which his nickname was Tulu Griffin, Andrew Coker, Charles Snowden, and Ron Stone Jr. There was one more, and I'll talk about that in a second. But the reason why Amari Gaynor, I basically put him out there was because I thought our linebacking room had a lot of question marks when it came to depth. And Amari Gaynor was a good inside linebacker at Florida State, but then he moved to the edge rushing position his senior season at University of North Carolina. And so I thought he had a really good chance because of what he showed as an inside linebacker at Florida State. I want us to move him to the linebacker position, which they ended up doing. And so, but then he did find himself a spot. But that was more or less because of the depth at the linebacker position. And I wasn't a real big fan of Divine Diablo. I thought last year was definitely his prove-it year on whether or not we are going to bring him back. And so Ladarius Griffin was more of his returning ability because you had the new kickoff rule. I thought he was going to help with that, but also I thought we needed more competition for Trey Tucker, and Ladarius Griffin could have been a really good slot type of receiver to kind of stretch the field. And then because we needed help in the offensive line, especially in the depth, I thought Andrew Coker, the offensive tackle at a TCU, he was a swing tackle, played 50% on the right side and left side. He split time. And so the versatility, I thought he had a good chance of potentially making this 53-man roster. And then you had Charles Snowden and Ron Stone Jr. Again, it's all because of the rotational piece. I did not think our depth at the edge rushing position last year was very strong. So I thought these guys had a chance. And Charles Snowden did get elevated to the 53-man roster. And the other guy that I didn't put on my initial evaluation as to making this roster because of the receivers that we had and the depth that we brought on prior to the draft. But once Michael Gallup announced his retirement, then I thought Ramel Keaton had a shot at making this 53-man roster because of that surprising retirement announcement that Michael Gallup basically kind of threw on us. And so after that happened, I went on and basically put a video out there saying that Ramel Keaton had a really good chance at making this roster because of that announcement. So again, just to kind of give you some insight as to the guys that I thought last year had a really good shot at making this 53-man roster. And again, out of the 6, 3 of them didn't make it. So just letting you know what my thoughts were last season and kind of just how it panned out. But again, injuries play a big role throughout the season as to whether or not an undrafted free agent is actually going to eventually make this 53-man roster. So let me kind of pull up our undrafted free agents and I'll give you some honorable mentions. And so let's kind of go through this. One guy that I definitely want to take a look at, Baylor defensive tackle, Trayvon Maia. He's 6'5", 290 pounds. Again, we could use some depth. Now, we did draft 2 defensive tackles, interior defensive tackles. Taka Hemingway might move around a little bit, but this is a guy to just take a look at. Again, if an injury does happen, you can elevate somebody, but at 6'5", 290, you look at the game film, man, this kid does not get pushed backwards. Yes, his pad level needs to be a little more consistent. He gets high a little too often, but even when his pad level does elevate, you're not pushing him backward. He stands his ground, but he's athletic enough where he can move sideline to sideline, and he's more of an athletic, big interior defensive tackle. He kind of reminds me of Jonah Laulu, which we already have in this rotation. And so one guy to kind of keep an eye on. And another guy is quarterback Haj Malik Williams. That's a guy that a lot of people have been talking about because of what he did at UNLV, right? The UNLV had their initial quarterback and then he left because of all the NIL stuff going on. And so Haj Malik Williams, he stepped in and he just hit the ground running. So he did some really good things at UNLV. Now, do I think he has a chance at making this 53-man roster? No, but the reason why I want to talk about him is because one of the things that you definitely want to take a look at and take into consideration when we bring in undrafted free agents is how can they help us on the practice squad? One thing to keep in mind is we have some really good mobile quarterbacks in our own division. We have Bo Nix as well as Patrick Mahomes. Both those guys can move. But then you look at who we're going to play this year. We're going to play Washington. They got Jaden Daniels over there. We're going to play the Bears. They got Caleb Williams over there. We're going to play teams that have mobile quarterbacks. And what Haj Malik Williams can do and help us when it comes to the practice squad is he can be that mobile quarterback that can mimic their play a little bit. mimic their mobility and help this defense prepare week in and week out for some of these mobile quarterbacks. And so, again, in my opinion, I don't think he's going to make the 53. I don't think he possesses the skill set. We already have, obviously, Geno Smith. We have Aiden O'Connell, but we also have Cam Miller that we already drafted. You're not going to carry more than 3 quarterbacks. Most likely going to only carry 2 with the emergency rule that was implemented last season. And so Hosmer Williams, I think that he's going to basically stay on this practice squad, hopefully stay on this practice squad, and help us week by week as it relates to preparing for the quarterbacks that we're going to face throughout the season. That's one thing to keep in mind with these practice squad guys. And then there's 2 other guys that, again, just honorable mention. Defensive tackle Anthony Booker out of SMU. I think there's a chance that, again, with injury, he might find himself a spot. And it's only because he is a big interior defensive tackle, something that we didn't necessarily possess before the draft. Now, we have brought on some very big guys to compete in the interior, like Leaky Tassi. He's an absolute monster that could potentially play in the middle. And so Anthony Booker is a massive human being himself at 6'3", I believe around 350. And so, again, just keep an eye on this kid. Keep an eye on it just in case an injury does happen. He might be able to find himself a spot on here because we don't have a lot of big body, short yardage type of interior tackles that can come in and be those short yardage specialty type of down defensive linemen. And then last but not least, again, just honorable mention, Illinois receiver Sakahari Franklin. This kid, now he ran a very slow 40, right? He's about 6'1", 190 pounds, I believe. And when you watch his film, one thing that I don't see the slow 40 time. That's one thing. And if I watch your film and you can still get good separation because you're a very good route runner and you have good hands, I think you can contribute when it comes to just a rotational piece or depth piece. He reminds me of a Jacoby Myers in just the way that he plays, right? Again, very good route runner. He can get good separation on the short routes. All right. He has no problem with being able to set up defenders and breaking properly to gain separation needed to be a good target for the quarterback. And then again, at least from the film that I saw, I have no issues with his hands. So at the end of the day, I do think that he's another guy to kind of watch out for. Again, we drafted 2 receivers. So I don't know whether or not he's going to find room on this 53-man roster, but we'll definitely see how it plays out. So those are just some honorable mentions. Now let's get to the guys that I think have a really good shot at potentially making this 53-man roster. And first one is Mello Dotson. He's a guy that I was surprised that he went as an undrafted free agent, that he didn't get drafted. I had him potentially in the 5th or 6th round, but obviously he fell. I do think that his 40 time really hurt him. But the thing is that he's got extremely good instincts. He still can play the football, jump the ball, jump routes extremely well. And that's what he showed at Kansas. And so in my opinion, I think he's got a really good chance at competing in this cornerback room. Now, one of the things that I will pay attention to is just how much these defensive back coaches like DC Richardson, D. Commandering Richardson. If they do like him, then obviously you got Jacorian Bennett, Eric Stokes, you got Darian Porter that we just drafted, and then you have DC Richardson. I don't think that we're going to carry more than 4 true corners because Darnay Holmes is most likely going to get some work at the nickel cornerback position. But if Mello Dotson can really battle and find himself using those good instincts that I see on the film, we'll see what happens with DC Richardson. I do think he stays on the roster. I don't think that they move on from, but watch out for Mello Dotson. Because of what I saw on the tape and his instincts and his ball skills, him being able to kind of track the ball in the air. And again, because of his slow 40 time, I do think he dropped, but I still see him being able to attach onto the hip of receivers and keep with them step by step. And he's a very physical cornerback as well. So I definitely think that helps him with the type of cornerbacks that Pete Carroll likes. So Mello Dotson, I definitely think is one that has a chance at making this 53-man roster to start the season. Let me know in the comment section down below what you think. What your thoughts are on Mello Dotson. And next one is interesting. I think Pat Conroy is a very interesting prospect because they kind of have him list him as a hybrid fullback. He did play tight end at Old Dominion. And let's do this. When you watch the game film, he does a very good job of route running. He's got good hands, but he also, from what I can see, could potentially be a very effective blocker. And here's the thing is, outside of Brockbowers and Michael Mayer, there's a bunch of question marks in our at the tight end position. And again, it's talking about where could he potentially fit in. And I know that they potentially can use him as a fullback, but I think that he also could be a backup just in case a Michael Mayer goes down. You need a physical guy that's going to be able to put his hand in the ground, be that extra run blocking tight end to kind of help pave way for Ashton Jeanty or anybody else that's in that backfield. And so I do think that Pat Conroy possesses a good amount of skill set, not only in the run blocking ability, but also in the pass catching game, that he might be able to compete with a Justin Shorter, a guy that came off of the practice squad last year. His position on this roster is not set in stone by any means. So I do think Pat Conroy can battle, and based on his game film, potentially find himself as the third tight end on this roster. But again, they might be converting him to a fullback, so I don't know how it's going to play out. He might be more of like that H-back, just lead blocker, true lead blocker for Ashton Jeanty. So we'll see how it plays out. But again, I do think that Pat Conroy has a chance at making this roster. So let me know in the comment section down below what you think, what your opinion is on Pat Conroy. And next is Matt Jones. Matt Jones is a guy, when you look at the game film, you know, they have him listed as a linebacker. He's 6'4", 246 pounds. Now, I don't think that he's athletic enough, or I don't think he possesses all the skills to be an off-the-ball linebacker like he played in Baylor. But what's funny is there were some stints when you go back and look at his film that he actually did come off the edge. He did play a little bit of just a speed rusher off the edge, and he looked actually pretty damn good. And at 6'4", 246 pounds, you put maybe 10 more pounds on him, he can potentially battle to be a potential converted edge rusher on this roster. You look at a guy like Josh Sweat. It's only about 250 pounds, 6'3", 250. Matt Jones, again, because our depth is really struggling. There's a lot of question marks in the depth as it relates to the edge rusher. There might be a chance that Matt Jones can convert himself to the edge and kind of step down and find himself as a rotational player on this 53-man roster. But at the same time, he could definitely help us out potentially on the kickoff and kick return room. So let me know what your thoughts are on Matt Jones. But I do think if you convert him to the edge rusher, he might have a chance at making this roster. I got two more left. Let's jump to Jarrod Hufford. Jarrod Hufford is a guy that, man, the more and more you watch his game film, because we do have a lot of question marks as it relates to the depth in our offensive line room. This is a guy that played almost all positions outside of center on the offensive line. And when he was at Iowa State, he played both guard and tackle positions. So he played all over the place, and he started 47 games at Iowa State. You watch the game film, man, this kid's he wants to put you in the ground. He's a very feisty player, especially in the run game. He's a very physical player. Now, what he lacks a little bit is in the pass protection. I do think that he's going to struggle against fast, more athletic edge rushers. It's almost like his upper body knows what to do, but his feet are kind of slow to react. And so I think that's why he's going to struggle a little bit. But again, with some good coaching to try to coach him up, you might be able to help him just with that technique side of things. When it comes to pass blocking, a lot of that has to do with technique and just having the instincts as it relates to the edge rushers, and study what those edge rushers want to do. A lot of edge rushers, they kind of have their main move, whether it's a bull rush or whether it's a rip move, whatever it may be, but they also have a second and third move. If you can study up on them, but then improve on your technique, you have a chance at being able to capitalize and find success in the pass blocking protection. But when it comes to run blocking, man, you need the mentality as a run blocker. Yes, a lot of technique, but you need the mentality. And I'll tell you right now, Jarrod Hufford has that mentality. He wants to put you in the dirt every single time. And that's kind of what I see at the game film. So I do think because of the question marks in the depth on our offensive line, I do think he might have a chance at finding himself competing at whether it be the guard position or potentially an offensive tackle position. So let me know what your thoughts are with Jarrod Hufford. But we're going to go to the last one, the last guy that I think has a really good chance at making this 53-man roster. And I do think that he probably has the best chance, which is Jah Joyner. You know, you look at Jah Joyner's game film. He's a big athletic defensive end at 6'4", 260 pounds. You know, he possesses just the size to be able to come off that edge, and he's got multiple moves, right? And just like I said when I was talking about Jarrod Hufford, you know, he's got multiple moves. He just doesn't have one set move. You watch his game film, he's got a second and third move in his arsenal to potentially come off that edge. But he's also extremely athletic. You watch plays where he can get off the block and get to the sideline and go chase somebody down. But you've also seen a couple times where there's even screens that kind of happen in front of him. He's able to track down that runner and kind of get them open space, which is not a very easy thing to do. And so I saw that a couple times. But most importantly, there was two specific plays where it showed how disciplined he is. I believe it was one, there was an end around, play went away, it came back. He stayed to his side, but as soon as his eyes tracked the ball carrier coming back his way, he was able to actually chase the guy down and make the play for a loss, make a tackle for a loss. And again, that just shows me that he also possesses the discipline side. And so, as again, 6'5", 260 pounds, man. This is a guy that I do think has a chance at chipping away at the depth at this edge rushing position because, one, outside of maxxcrosby and Malcolm Koonce, Tyree Wilson, a lot of question marks. Charles Snowden, a lot of question marks. We don't even know if he's going to be on this roster because of what he did, the DUI that he had last season with him. But then outside of that, there's a lot of question marks at the edge rushing position as it relates to the depth. And so Jaw Joyner, again, I do think has a really good shot at making this 53-man roster. So at the end of the day, let me know in the comment section, what do you think of Jaw Joyner? Do you think he has a shot at making this roster initially? And so I'm going to kind of go back up to this big screen. I appreciate you guys keeping with me on this one. Just to kind of recap the 5 guys that I do think that have a chance at making this roster. You got Mello, Dotson, you got Pat Conroy, you have Matt Jones, as well as Jarrod, Hufford, and Jaw Joyner. And so let me know in the comment section what you think about that breakdown. If anybody I missed, do you think somebody else I should have thrown into that mix? But at the end of the day, this is what makes preseason so exciting. A lot of people may not get up for preseason. You just think, there's not a whole lot to watch, but these are guys that are competing, and injuries happen every single season. And so you want to make sure that the best of the best are still sitting there, ready to be rotated in, ready to take a step into that starting position, because if someone does get hurt, the next man up mentality is huge. And you look at a lot of the teams throughout the league, when injuries do happen, the teams that have somebody well coached and ready to step in are the ones that most likely will continue to battle towards the tail end of the season when that injury bug does hit, because it hits the majority of the other teams. And so I appreciate you guys sticking with me again. If you can, hit that like button, subscribe, turn those notifications. My next giveaway is at 5,000 subscribers. So if you want to be included, hit that sub button. I definitely appreciate it. And hit me up if you're going to be in Bakersfield next weekend, man. It would definitely be great to put a name to a face and just chop it up with you guys. I appreciate all my supporters, and that's why I do the giveaways. And so I definitely appreciate you. But man, once again, happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. We appreciate you. Have a great rest of your day. Make sure you guys tap in, hit that notifications, because I do go live on Tuesdays and Sundays to chop it up with more of you guys. So I appreciate you. Again, have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys on the next one. I'm out of here.